Have your students asked you for the best possible study guide for AP Environmental Science? Because I know my students have, and so I began researching all the different review guides out there for AP Environmental Science, and everything I was finding was super expensive or super detailed that I know my students were never going to really look through it to get the help that they need to study. So instead, I decided to make one of my own study guides that will really help my students get the big picture things that they need to review before the AP exam in May. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I was able to create my own study guide for AP Environmental Science and how I use it within my classroom to help make my students expert learners. Before I jump in, if you are thinking about trying to get your students to be expert learners in the classroom, I do just want to highly recommend the use of a standards-based grading system. By switching up your grading system, you can help have students focus on learning over grades. And if you don't know where to start in setting up this type of grading system, make sure to click on the link in the description below, as it will bring you to a free guidebook that I put together to go through step by step what you would need to do to set up your own standards-based grading system. I will tell you, it has made a significant difference in my students' ability to master content because they are now focused on the process of learning over the process of just getting points to get a good grade. So in this video, I do want to talk about how I get my students to study for the AP Environmental Science exam before it gets to May and all that cram studying will happen at the end of the year. So thinking back to myself as a student through high school, through college, I always tried to do my best in school. And I would do whatever means necessary to perform really well. And that did involve studying on my own outside of class. But the problem was I had to come up and learn how to study all on my own. I don't ever remember being explicitly taught how to study for a class. And so now, fast forward to being a teacher, I realize the same is true of my students. They've gone through, 10, 11, 12 years of schooling without being properly taught how to study. And I really realized this after my first year of teaching because students were doing well with classwork, homework. They could really apply what they were learning about to new problems. But when it came time to assessments, they were performing so poorly, and it was like, where is this disconnect happening? You get what I'm teaching you in class, but when it comes time to be assessed via a test or a quiz, you're performing really poorly. And leading up to tests or quizzes, on my homework board, I would write study with exclamation points, right? Putting emphasis to it. And I thought that would be enough to make students do some, work outside of the classroom to prepare for these tests and quizzes. But seeing that poor performance, I knew, it wasn't working. And, I really thought back to myself, well, I don't think I was ever taught how to study. So these students probably have never been taught how to study. And so that's what really led me to changing up the way that I help students prepare for exams, preparing to master content in a class. And what's unique about science courses is there is so much content that students are responsible to know. There's vocab, there's the actual content itself. And so there's a lot of review that needs to be happening outside of class. And if I was not explicitly teaching these students how to be reviewing and studying at home, then I was doing them a complete disservice. So now I make it an explicit point in my AP Environmental Science class to teach students how to study. And one of the best study tools or tactics that I think helps my students prepare for that exam is using one-page review guides. I came across this idea when I was looking and researching of different studying tactics that I could use. And when I saw the idea of a one-page review guide, I instantly was hooked. Because what it is it's simply one single page that has all the information and content for a particular topic. And so that means you cannot have every single little detail because you only have one page of real estate to work with when it comes to making this study guide. And thinking back to when I was a student, or I've seen students studying, they want to write every little thing down. They want to review every single minor detail. And while that's a good thing, that is not helping them become an expert at the big picture topics. Right? They're missing out on the big details because they're so focused on all these little details. And so a one-page review guide is really boiling it, all of the detail in a particular topic, to the big ideas that are important to know. And the other aspect of a one-page review guide that I really like is because you don't have a lot of space, not only do you have to write things very succinctly on it, you can use lots of imagery to take the place of a lot of text. Because sometimes pictures can say a lot more than text or words can. I ended up making these one-page review guides per each unit for the AP Environmental Science course. So I took one unit, for example, Unit 1, all about ecosystems, and I took one single page and put all the important information that students are responsible for knowing about that one unit on that one page. And I did this for every unit of the course, coming out to be 9 different review guides for each standard. And I really liked creating these because, again, it was focusing on the major points that students needed to know and be responsible for over every little single minor detail, which they do have that information in their notes or in my notes that are posted online. But this is making them focus on the bigger picture things that are of most importance. And when creating these review guides, again, I try to use more imagery and graphs and charts than using text. So again, focusing on what students want to remember most, sometimes it's easier to remember an image than it is words. I also do reserve a little space at the top of my review guides to identify any important vocabulary that they must know within a particular unit. And this is extremely helpful because those words are going to tie into the content that is in with that review guide, so they can see these are words that I definitely need to know if I'm going to understand anything else within this review guide. And then also up at the top, I also create a little section for key information. So usually that would be things like formulas, math concepts, or laws, rules, things that students need to know, like definitely need to know, will be on the AP exam. I reserve another little spot at the top of my little review guide that pulls out some of the most important information that they just need to know. So oftentimes I try to pull out formulas that they just have to memorize, or a specific law that's related that they just have to know for the course. And by putting it in a little separate box at the top, it really highlights that important information that students will need to know. So you could easily make these little one-page review guides for the different topics. You could even have students make their own one-page review guides as a form of studying for themselves. So they are responsible for taking one unit and boiling it down to the most important topics. And this is not a case of they have that one page and they write or type in the tiniest font possible. No, the idea here is to take only the most important information and put it on that page. So now they can, at a glance, look at that one page and review the most important information that they need to know. So how I use these one-page review guides in my class is after we've finished each individual unit, I will post my one-page review guide for that particular topic. And I tell students that you need to be looking over and reviewing this content on your own outside of class, because in my class, I give weekly quizzes. And these quizzes will cover any content that we have gone over so far in the year. So if we've covered 3 different units, their quizzes will pull questions from any of those 3 units. Everything is extremely cumulative because we have that AP exam in May. And sometimes these one-page review guides can be really helpful as just a quick refresher before a quiz is going to be had in class, right? So if they come in and see the agenda on the board, hey, I need to be prepared for a quiz, then they can quickly pull out that just 1-page review guide and look over some of the most important detail about that particular unit that they could be assessed on. I believe that having only 1 page to look through is a lot quicker and easier for review than having to flip through hundreds of pages of notes. And so, as I already alluded to, just looking over a review guide is a form of studying, but to really make my students master content, I will create assignments where they have to make their own 1-page review guide. So I give them 2 options. They can either make their own 1-page review guides digitally or on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of computer paper. When it comes to writing things on it, and they do it by hand, I tell them that it shouldn't be microscopic font, right? You shouldn't be writing so small that you can't read it. I should be able to look at it and get the most important information I need very quickly. I shouldn't have to be squinting. If they're doing it digitally, they get one single slide in Google Slides to create their review guide. And I like Google Slides better than Google Docs just because it gives you more manipulation of where things are on the page. I also recommend doing it digitally over doing it on paper just because you can pull in graphics that can say a lot more than text can. Whereas if you were doing it on paper, you'd either have to draw that graphic or trace it, or maybe not include visuals at all. So I recommend doing it digitally because there's more power to take in imagery from the internet that could be valuable than just having words on a page. So what I'll do for this is at the end of a unit, I will make a homework assignment saying, okay, by next class, you need to bring in a 1-page review guide, either on paper or submit digitally through Google Classroom. Just show me that you went through and studied this. And I put on my little originality reports to ensure that students are not just copying, pasting text from anywhere, that they're each doing this on their own, because the goal of this is while they are flipping through their notes or flipping through slides from the course, they are taking that information and figuring out what is most important to know. I can't write everything on the page because I just don't have enough room. So I need to really make sure I'm understanding what I'm writing because I only want to put that most important information. So they are analyzing and taking a lot of information and only putting the most important pieces. So that alone in itself is a form of studying. And then the byproduct of that is now they have their own little 1-page review guide that they can refer back to when they quickly need a refresher on a particular topic. So now instead of just writing the word studying on the board for homework, I am now having a concrete assignment where students have to physically turn something in as a form of showing me that they are studying on their own outside of class. Right? I'm not just saying flip through your notes. I'm now saying take what you have in your notes and do something with it. And that is a more powerful form of studying to help students master the content of this course before we get to May, where they need to know everything from the course possible for that AP exam. So I think you should try this form of studying out in your AP classroom and let me know how it works. Leave me a comment if you try this out in your class and it really seems to help your students. I have found that these quick little 1-page review guides are an extremely valuable study tool for my students. It has made studying outside the classroom more concrete than ever before, and I believe that it is making my students better learners in the classroom because they can take this skill and apply it to any other class. It doesn't just have to be AP Environmental Science. So let me know how it works for you and your students, and I look forward to chatting with you soon.